Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Our tutorial today features the Lavinia Pixie Boot and a play on the old nursery rhyme of an old woman who lived in a shoe. Let's take a look at the supplies we will use for this fun and whimsical card. We will use the Lavinia Smooth and Supreme cardstock. I have cut this down to 6.5 inches by 4.5 inches. We will then have a piece of cardstock that we will use as our frame, and I've just done a white one that is cut to 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. For our card base, I took a piece of cardstock and cut it to be 10 inches by 7 inches, and then I have folded that in half. For our stamps today, we will use the Lavinia Pixie Boot. This one is number LAV 849. We will use Quinn, our lovely fairy here. She is LAV 693. We will be using the Creeping Vine. This one is LAV 295. We will be using a couple of the fairy sets. The first one is the Fairy Foragers, LAV 498. And then we've got 3 Dancing Fairies, LAV 136A. I don't have the original packaging. This was a gift to me, and they didn't give it to me with the packaging, but there's our lovely little fairies. And then finally, we will use the little lavender that is in the set of the one called Flower Pots, and this one is LAV 826. We're going to be using a circle mask to create our sun, and I have just cut one out. This is one that I made a long time before I started doing Lavinia stamps, but Lavinia has some wonderful hill masks that you can get on the bellosdesigns.com website. We'll also be using some hill masks, and the same thing with that. You can either cut your own out of paper or look at the great masks that they have on bellosdesigns.com. We're going to go ahead and use several different inks today. We're going to be using the Distress inks. I have chosen to use Mowed Lawn, Pine Needles, Carved Pumpkin, Chip Sapphire, Wilted Violet, and Mustard Seed. To create our shadowing, I've got a little bit of black soot that we will use for that. For our basic stamping, we're going to be using the Versifying Clair Nocturne. I'm also going to be using several different smaller tools. We'll be using our blending brush as well as some daubers. And then we will be using the Sakura Glitter Jelly Pen. You probably can't see it very well. See if I can catch the light. But I've got the fairy wings done with some of the clear glitter. We'll also use a fine point black ink pen. And then we'll use several colors of art markers. I'm also going to be using the Lavinia masking sheets. This will be used as we create our boot. We'll be using a stamping platform as well. And then to create a little bit of this starry look here on the top of the card, we've got a excuse me, a spray bottle and some paper towels. All right, so let's get started on our project. Okay, so what we're going to start out doing is grabbing our stamping platform and our piece of the Lavinia Multifarious. So what we're going to do first is we are going to stamp the boot. And let me move some of my stuff here so that I don't knock things off onto the floor. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that boot, and we want to actually have it laying down so that our stamp of Quinn, she can sit on top of the boot. So I'm just going to lay that right about there. and ink up our stamp. I like to put a lot of ink on because I like a really nice dark impression. We may end up doing it a second time, which is one of the reasons that I really love the stamping platform, is that if I need to, I can always go back and make a second stamping. All right, see what we've got. Oh, there we go. That's very nice. All right, and then what we're going to want to do at this point is just then go ahead and remove our piece from the stamping platform. We'll bring it back here in just a few minutes. Set that aside. So what we want to do now is go ahead and mask off the boot. And as you can see here, the reason I did that is because I want to go back in with my markers and color that in later on. So I'm going to start out with my, I'm going to start out with cutting out the boot using our Lavinia masking sheets. So what you're going to want to do is just stamp an image of the boot onto the masking sheet. It's got a plastic cover on one side, and then it's got the paper on the other side. So once you do that, and I'm going to go ahead and pull out my mask that I already made, so you don't have to sit and watch me cut it out. So I did my stamping, and then I cut it out. Now, as you'll notice here, and I've got my little piece here, I went ahead and just cut out those little pieces here that are really hard to cut around, and that actually it doesn't matter if those aren't cut out, because when you do your work on top of it, you're not going to notice any of the ink or anything. You just mainly want your main body of your piece to be what you can mask out. So as I said, it's got this clear plastic piece. So once we've cut out our mask, we peel it off of this little plastic piece. You can then keep this if you would like to use if you do the project or another project using the same stamp again. Then we're just going to lay that over our project that we've stamped on there the first time, so that we can mask this out. Now we're going to bring our stamping platform back. Lay this piece down. And then we are going to go ahead and start our process of doing our hills and our sky. So take your hill mask and let's go ahead. I think I'm going to do the ground first. So we're just going to lay that wherever we really feel like we want. I kind of like to do it so that a little bit of the sky will show through. We'll have a little bit of the grass right here behind the boot. We don't want the boot to be completely not on the grass, if that makes sense to you. You'll kind of see as we go along here. So now that I've got my mask down, I'm going to take my pine needles and my mowed lawn. We'll start out with our mowed lawn, and we will grab a couple of different brushes here to get the one for the green. And then we're just going to lightly go across this entire area to lay down a base of our light green. All right, now once we've got that down, let's go ahead and get out our green dauber and our pine needles. So what we're going to start out by doing is just doing some of the darker green to give a little bit of shading on our hills. And you can either use a brush or a dauber. I like the dauber because I have a little more control over it. And I'm just going to do this kind of along the top area of my mask. Now, let's go ahead and add in some more hills. And one of the things I want to do is make my hill, one of my hills, pretty much come up under and support. Let's see how I want to do that. So that the hill is kind of underneath my boot there. It's resting kind of on a little mound of that. And then I'm just going to take my dauber and kind of add a little bit of shading with the pine needles. And maybe some going a little bit this way. And maybe just a little bit up this way. And then I'll put just a tiny little bit of the darker green just at the very base here. All right, and now we're ready to go ahead and start working on the sky. And I think for the sky part, I am just going to go ahead and remove this off of the stamping platform. It's actually a little bit easier to work on when I don't have the stamping platform in the way when I'm working on the background. So we'll set that aside for the moment and bring it back. All right, and then sometimes I like to just go ahead and put a little piece of tape back behind my card just so it doesn't wiggle too much while I'm working on my project. All right. So now we're going, we had this here for our bottom part. So what we want to do is we want to mask the top part out using the other half of that piece of paper that I cut. So that lies and lines up right here. So that we can start creating that sky part. Now, once I have got this down, I want to go ahead and take my moon mask, and you see I have a little piece of paper. That's to just also keep it from wiggling around too much. And I'm just going to slide that in back behind there so that I've got the moon's part, the sun part masked off for the sky that we're going to do. So we're going to start out with our carved pumpkin, because this that way with the sun setting, we want to be able to see the oranges that we always see with our lovely little sunsets like that. So I'm going to take my carved pumpkin and just add the carved pumpkin around the lower part of the sky. Then we will go back in with some of the wilted violet. Get a little bit more of that pretty purple that we get with a sunset. And then we'll top it off with our chipped sapphire at the very top. Okay, so now we have got our sky part done. So we can go ahead and remove this mask. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to kind of cover up the little bit of the lower part, because I just want some stars to kind of be in the top where the darker blue is just starting to show up as the sun goes down here. So I'm just going to lightly kind of spritz to get a little bit of that starry effect with my water. So once we let that sit for just a second or two, then we can take our paper towel and just kind of daub that up just a little bit. And then that just gives us the look of the stars coming up out in the darker part of the top part. All right, so now we can go ahead and remove our moon mask and our mask over our boot. We're going to take our mustard seed and just dash some yellow in there. And this doesn't have to be real even, just kind of a little dash of the yellows. And some parts can be light and some dark, so that we get the effect of the sun coming up. All right, and now we are ready to go ahead and move on to putting some more of our stamps onto our picture card here. All right, so let's go ahead and bring our stamping platform back. We can remove the tape from our picture. And we'll go ahead and mount this back onto our sticky grid here. I use a sticky grid, that way I don't have to worry about magnets when I'm doing my work. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get Quinn and have her sitting on our boot. We'll have her feet resting on top of the button there. Get her all lined up and inked up. Now, because she is a little more solid, we will probably have to do it a couple of times of the inking, re-inking her up. I've just found that in order for me to get a really good, nice, solid stamp, sometimes I have to do a second stamping, especially when you've got just a whole lot of solid stamp. So let's see what we get here. Not bad. We'll add just a tiny little bit more just to get it a little bit sharper. Wipe off my screen there so I don't get it smeared on the card. All right, there's a nice solid image of Quinn. So next, let's go ahead and put in some of the climbing ivy. Let's see. My stamp is stuck to something, I think. There it is. All right. Now sometimes, so I don't get my stamping platform too marked up, I'll go ahead and put a little bit of paper down just to keep me from stamping too much over the edge. So we are going to just place some of this climbing ivy coming down. Okay, so now we've got some of our trailing ivy there. And actually I may put just a teeny little bit right here in the corner. Let's just see if we can get just a little bit of an image right there. Alright. And now we're ready to go ahead and put just a little bit of shadowing down underneath our boot. So we're going to go ahead and take some black soot. This just helps to ground it just a little bit. Put just a little bit of shadowing down there. And then in order to ground it just a little bit more, this is where I want to take my fine tip black pen. And I'm just going to add a little bit of grass and landscaping underneath. We're also going to add it into some of these places around here on other parts of the grass. And we'll add a few more later on as we put our little bits of flowers in. Okay, so now at this point we are ready to go ahead and put in some of our little lavender plants here. So we're just going to kind of sprinkle some here throughout a few areas just to give it a little bit of a foliage pop here. So we're going to start with one right about here. And then continue to just pop some in a few places. Okay, so there we go. That gives us just a nice little bit of foliage there. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to popping in our lovely little different fairies that we've got here. So let's see what we want to start out with. Let's go ahead and put this one. Let's see. Excuse me. I think I'll put her somewhere down here. And then I will just go ahead and continue to put them around in various little places. Let's see. What can we do with our lovely little fairies? Okay, so now we've got all of the little children of the fairy here, and let's go ahead and do just a little bit of more of the detail work with our grass and foliage, and then we'll move on to coloring in our boot. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the stamping platform and just draw in a little bit more foliage. I'm going to go ahead and ground our little plants here that we've put in there with a little bit of grass and sprigs around them. All right. And now we'll go ahead and move on and do this part of our card here and add the little bit of the art marker work right here in on the boot. And then we will be pretty close to being able to go ahead and put our card together. With the colors, I want to go ahead and kind of stay with the colors that I've got with the sunset there. So I'm going to use some purples and some oranges and maybe just a little bit of a kind of a teal color in here. And so we will start out with a very light purple on our boot, and then I will add in some shading with some darker colors and highlights and pops with some orange. So let's see what we can do with our beautiful boot here. All right. All right, so now we've just added some really nice little pops of color there in our boot. And for the final part, before we are ready to put the card together, is we're going to put a little bit of sparkle on the wings. And so I have got my Sakura Jelly Roll glitter pen here, and I'm just going to go in and kind of trace around all the little wings on all the fairies, so that we can kind of give them that little bit of sparkle and magic to their wings and to their look. It'll be a little hard for you to see here, I think, on the camera. There, you can catch it just a little bit. But it really adds a nice little effect to it in reality. Okay, so now we have got the little bit of sparkle there. Just kind of makes it pop. All right, so let's go ahead and move on and finish putting our card together. Okay, to put our card together, we're going to start out with mounting our art card to our frame piece. And with that, I'm just going to use a rolling tape here. You can use a regular paper glue if you'd like to as well. I like the adhesive roll because I can just do it so quickly. All right, get this centered onto our frame piece. And now we will mount it onto our card base. Same process, just use the adhesive tape. And center it on our card base. There we go. All right. And now we've finished our card. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed this fun and whimsical card of the old fairy who lives in a shoe with all of her children. Remember to check out the DellBellsDesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day.